So I'm not gonna go through the last meeting agenda because there was nothing really closed there. It was more discussions than.
Well, the last meeting there was an agenda but not meeting notes. It was a very short meeting because David and I came together for about 5 minutes and then called it a day.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
We had a lovely meeting though.
Yeah,
It was
Yeah,
excellent.
cool.
Right in time. Yeah. I have a question in line of that. When you started the core team meetings, it was really necessary because most of the core modules were not fit for DNN 9.2.
Yep.
But if I look at the current state of the different core modules, I think most of them are fit for 9.2. So is there a really need to have this meeting every 2 weeks?
Well, I'll be here. I'm not forcing anybody's harm, but I mean, I'll be here. Anybody wants to join and chat?
Okay.
I mean, I know for me, so I think I had good intentions of doing a lot of more things with the community modules, and that got derailed a bit with some of the persona bar stuff that we did. But I know I would like it because I'd like to start talking about some improvements on some of these and how we can contribute. I don't know. You're probably in the same boat there, Daniel, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat, and I mean, I still have a lot of clients that use some of those modules, and I need to keep them up to date for my needs. So I'm gonna keep maintaining as I can, but yeah, there was a lack of time, and there was a shift in intentions on my part to try and get the DNN 9.3 out, which now is very close to a reality, but it consumed a lot of my time for me.
Yeah, so I also think that this meeting could slowly morph or open up to a more general developers meeting. I think it should still focus on having, the core modules up to date. I think that's definitely something that is really great that you put your shoulders under. But like David, I'm also looking to find a channel through which to discuss, some of the other work of the dev team concerning tooling and, what best practices, that kind of stuff. And I think it fits very well inside of this forum anyway. So I think there'll be enough content, and I can certainly deliver. Could consume more time from these meetings if you want me to. I mean, there's a lot of stuff still happening, of course. And I'll name a couple as we go on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine for me. Just a matter because of the last two meetings back, there were only Andrew and Daniel, and the last meeting there were only David and me. That's not a problem for me, but maybe we can, if it's very hard to come together, maybe do it not every 2 weeks, but every 4 weeks. But I'm fine.
Daniel had the car issue last time, I believe, and he got stranded. So that was not the norm. He's usually here.
No, that's right.
Yeah. So
okay.
And there's another one I may miss at the end of March because I have a job which is outside. But yeah, as much as possible, I'll be here, and if people join, they join. If they don't, they don't. I mean,
okay,
can't force anybody, but I'd like to try and keep them up to date as much as possible.
Fine.
So, in the finished business side of things, I put an RFC out for the site log module, see if there's a personable, or if nobody uses it, then we're just wasting time. But I think it would be a good candidate for persona bar module because there's nothing for users, and it could be an example that we can showcase on how to make persona bar modules. So the RFC is out for people to comment on that. Things that we're continuing, automated builds. So that's pretty much working. Anybody can go and opt into that, right?
Have you amended your spreadsheet to show which of the core modules is already doing the automatic build? Because it's currently only the wiki module, I think. But
no, I have not.
Because I think
There's
it's
still some
really
changes that we
beneficial if we can get all the community modules to use the same kind of automated build. That would be a very good example.
Yes,
Right.
I'm gonna add a column for that.
Poor Andrew, your mic is not overriding everybody else's mic, so they get to win. Can we let Andrew speak?
Sorry, Andrew.
Just kidding. So there's a couple things that I wanted to mention about build status. So the wiki project, last time I checked, should be working and have an example for other projects to follow. One of the big things that I discovered within the past week, and I just haven't had a chance to talk with anyone about it, is we talked about creating a templates project in GitHub. That way it was more accessible for people to take a look at and use, as opposed right now the templates project is on Azure DevOps. So I just found this out the other week that I could host those projects in GitHub and reference them. So a GitHub project could reference a templates project that lives in GitHub. And I didn't realize that was a feature of the Azure Pipelines templating engine. So there's some changes that I want us to implement in that regard, because that way now if we put the templates in GitHub, it makes it more accessible for anyone in the community. They don't need to have any insider knowledge of where the templates live. They could just go and find it on GitHub like anyone else can.
Great.
All right. I would like to just stay on 7.1 if that's okay for a second. Andrew, you were aware, I think you were there, right, when I did a presentation a while back on Cake supported builds of modules.
I watched the video. I was not there, but I watched the video.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I know both of us are more or less on the same wavelength of where we would like to go. And just for your info, I mean, for DNN Connect, I'd really like to make a push on having a lot of content about Azure DevOps there, on what it means for module developers, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, the goal being that there should be a working example of a module leveraging at least automated builds. Does I didn't see this bit that you did with the wiki module, but out of curiosity, I mean, I guess you get the label, the nice label saying build past, etc. As you check in your code, right? That's basically what we're talking about. How about packaging? Is that seen as a completely separate or not?
Right now, the goal changed slightly with how we were running the builds, because so many of these projects are using MS Build instead of having the process of, okay, let's start using Azure DevOps. Let's also start using Cake immediately. So let's rewrite our build engines to use Cake. We ended up with this pass just being invoking MS Build and the artifacts they had created with that. So
okay.
right now it's not using Cake.
Right. So in terms of the actual module build stuff with Cake, am I correct that I'm slightly ahead of you there with the packaging and creating a manifest and everything?
No. For the community modules, yes. But for other modules, no. Last month, I put together a persona bar module that's using Cake to run the entire build and deployment scripts as necessary. So okay. I am using Cake for a couple different purposes. One, I'm using it to run a local build. Also using Cake to run a sideload deployment to a development website. That way, instead of using symlinks and stuff like that, I was able to just create a script that would copy over the assemblies over to my DNN website, and then I'd be able to debug it. I also had a Cake script that would run my packaging. It would update my manifest file for me. It would create my install. It would package up everything for me and create the zip that I can then install into a DNN website.
Right. Within your cake scripts, do you also sidestep into C#, i.e., do you leverage a library along with that, or do you do
No.
cake?
The only thing I do, and I gotta double check the repository. 1 second.
When you have a second, I don't have access to edit. I would like to copy the link to show in the repository. It could be after the meeting, but
Okay. Yeah. So looking at Daniel, can you give me a screen for a second?
yes, sir. Probably. Yeah, there we go.
All right.
That's close up, by the way.
All right. Can you guys see my screen?
I do.
Yep.
Yep. So this is a cake script that I wrote for doing everything that I was just mentioning. Not all of it is very pretty code, but because I haven't really had a chance to sit down and optimize it. But anyways, this is the script that I was just referencing, and it does create all the package stuff. The only thing that it pulls in outside, it's all just really task code. The only thing it pulls in outside is this PowerShell add-in. I created a small PowerShell script that I use alongside with this to update the DNN manifest file.
Right. Okay. So I mean that's fair enough. But this is what you use personally. It's not what you use in the community modules side.
No, I'm not using it. I haven't written anything like this for the community modules. I needed this for a module that I was creating, and I think it's a good starting point for if we want to use Cake in the community modules. There's definitely pros and cons to using Cake and not using Cake. I'm kind of. I don't have a strong opinion either way. I see both points.
No, I don't either. I just took it to pretty much an extreme. There's a bit more code in the solution that you looked at on the recording that was made from a session I made. But notably, I found myself needing to step outside to C# to do, for instance, streaming zips, or to do more intricate manipulation of the manifest file, which I just found easier in C# because unfortunately in Cake I just cannot get proper, good, decent IntelliSense.
Right. No, it's
it doesn't matter because in the end, I mean, it's all C# code anyway.
Right.
But when I look at the our module landscape and saying, okay, so where are we now roughly heading? I mean, one of the I think key things is what has been achieved now for the Wikimedia module is that, okay, whatever is there in the repo is building, right? It's good. It's green, let's say. And is there any value in leveraging packaging in DevOps or not?
So what is the goal of packaging in your mind?
I guess the only, because the goal of the first was what we've done now, the green thing, is that when you check in code, there's no more work for you to do to actually, flag to others or have people know that the stuff still builds, right?
Right.
It's still okay. So my guess was, well, if you take this one step further, then the whole packaging process, the whole release process also starts getting driven by DevOps, meaning there is very little for us to intervene.
Okay.
Let's say I update one specific file, I don't know, some version number file, and all of a sudden it starts building the release, and it is released at that point.
Right.
In time.
Okay. Perfect. Now I'm understanding you 100% now. So there's two options here, and there's a best practice that I used to follow that I don't follow anymore. And then there's a newer way, which I think is what I'm going to recommend. But just for context, I want to give you guys both. So in Azure pipelines, they have two concepts. They have your standard pipeline build, and then they have something called a release pipelines.
Right.
And release pipelines orchestrate out very complex release processes for enterprise applications to smaller things as well. And it's very good for one project at a time. I go in there and I configure it and everything works. It's not very good for a suite of projects like we currently have. So we have, I don't know exactly how many, but let's say we have 20 community modules. We would have to go in and create a release pipeline for each that took the artifact, and we'd have to go in there and manually create this pipeline that would go and, let's say, do the GitHub release notes. Let's say upload the zip installer to GitHub, maybe update a community website somewhere, and we'd have to wire up those tasks. With the template YAMLs, what I've been doing now, switching gears to what I do now, not that way doesn't have merit, but for what we have, I wouldn't recommend it. What I do now is I would create a release template that's used as part of our template suites. So if I open up, let's go find the right one. There it is. DNS community is what I want, not association. So we go to the community modules project here. So right now, this is broken up into a build section, which is this first area that I got highlighted, and a release section. And I already started to lay out the groundwork for the release section. And the idea here is instead of creating a build pipeline and a release pipeline, we put it all in the same template. And when you're ready, you do some type of condition that triggers that. And in my case here, let me move the talking heads out of the way. In my case here, we set up the certain variables that you can update in your actual project. So we check for release that a source branch matches our release branch. It defaults to the master branch. You can change that to whichever you want. We make sure that we have our GitHub information set at the build parameter level, because what this release task is going to do is it's going to trigger the GitHub release notes. Now, with all of that, we could also set it up to check, maybe instead of a release, maybe instead of the master branch, maybe we set it up to check a tag. Instead of heads master, you do tag / you can put in a star to run on any type of tag. And I do that for some of my own projects. And then it would run this release template here, which in this case here, all it's doing is getting the GitHub release notes that David did a demo on the other month. And then it runs the task to process and update the GitHub release notes over on the project side. So I think this answers what we're doing for the packaging side of stuff. And this would be, even though it all kind of ends up being coupled into the CI build in Azure pipelines, this is what I'm doing for my clients, and I found it very helpful, especially when you have this many projects that you want to follow the exact same template.
Okay, so yeah, one thing that I found confusing is the level of isolation that we're apparently heading towards, because when you said, oh, but we have so many projects going on at the same time, and therefore it becomes very difficult to orchestrate all that. I was still under the impression that everything could live very isolated from each other, and each, because every module has its own release cadence, it's some modules might not get a new release.
Right, and that would be determined by the project maintainer. So if you wanted to release a module tomorrow, you could. Right now it's determined based on when you commit something to master. So if you commit something to master, that's gonna trigger a release.
Okay.
I think the idea too is that there's this one kind of standard way of doing it that you have the option of consuming or not.
Right.
So, that gives the flexibility if you want to live in pure isolation and not use this.
Standard.
It's not very it's standard, but it may not do what exactly you want to do. So you have the option of not doing it.
Well, there's going to be a pretty high demand for the DNN Connect conference for sessions, I think, because there's a lot of stuff to get through, and that means a lot of sessions for this kind of stuff. Already you lost me at the YAML stuff. Obviously I need to read up on that stuff.
Feel free to shoot me an email about that stuff. I'm gonna do my personal plug right now for something that I started working on.
Hey Andrew, before you switch off that, would you mind just going back to the DevOps thing? Just go to your pipelines there. No, not there. Sorry. Over in the left bar, your pipelines.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're in here, but you can do this via the UI. It's just that YAML is kind of like the code version and gives you more flexibility. I didn't know if that dot was connect for you there, Peter, but you can build these build pipelines and release pipelines in the UI, and and achieve similar stuff. But YAML.
I'll be brutally honest with you. I'm still getting to grips with all the nomenclature and the various how the various bits and pieces jive together. I'm making progress, but give this 50-year-old a bit of time to digest all of this. And at the same time, I'm trying to figure out where the bits and pieces that I created kind of fit into this whole landscape. That's one question I have. The other question I have is, who am I going to target to drag in front of my audience at DNN Connect and say, please, give us something on, I don't know, pipelines or something.
Well, if
I would love to be there this year, but financially, it's unless you pay for my flight and ticket.
Hey, Peter's paying for my flight. I mean, he could probably pay for your flight too. Yeah, I'm just kidding.
If I look at it, I think the audience could be module developers who want to have a standard way of building packages. And the most optimal way is that you have your normal GitHub repository with the normal branching, and somewhere you include one or two files, making the prerequisites that you have set up your repository on a standard way, and it will do the build and packaging for you, including release notes, including the right manifest, including the version number, and so forth, including minification of JavaScript files, including minification of CSS. So it would add a benefit. You don't have to understand everything what's behind there, but it will do the things for you if you build your repository in a certain way with certain files and certain folders.
Yeah, because
that was the idea.
At the base, if your build produces the package already locally, you can just fire up a build pipeline and it's going to do whatever it does locally. The rest is add-ons, but at the base, it fires up a build for you.
Yeah.
Before I forget to mention to you guys, I started this new project that some of the stuff is going to come back to the community modules for build templates. When I found that I could put this stuff out in GitHub and reference it from any of my, whether it's closed source or open source, I created this open source project that's running all of my build infrastructure now, and I'm adding to it as I need to. I'm actually planning to build a cake folder and DNN folder to run those types of builds. And the reason why I wanted to point this out to you guys is if we open up the Xamarin file, there's all sorts of different things to run Xamarin builds Just like if we go back over to our repository here, let's pull up the repository again. Just like over here, right now it's just running a simple MS build. We could set it up so we could have a cake folder, an MS build folder, and maybe we could have a node folder and such. So different module developers can choose the different paths that, or the different the templates they need. The way I end up consuming this is very similar to how we, over here, we just reference this Azure Pipelines file. I would be referencing the Xamarin specific Azure pipelines, or I'd be referencing, there's a GitHub Azure Pipelines file for doing my GitHub releases. So it's not just one set of templates. We can create as many as we need to cover the different use cases for the core modules or in community modules.
Cool. Make sure, if you can, to tap Kelly Ford on his shoulder when you get to the NN Summit and chat with him about how he thinks we should get all of this stuff documented in the future. I'm sure other people would love to help out with that. I don't think you need to do everything yourself. But you're obviously leading the charge on getting modules on DevOps, and it will be, like I said, I think that's the kind of the new hotness for this year, and it's something that would be of value to our community if we can make this, more standard practice than it was last year, let's say.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. I'll have to see if I can hunt him down and be able to chat about it. One thing, like the problem with the build YAML that I've found is if it's like I compare it to using VI. It's really powerful if you know what you're doing. If you don't, it's 100 different ways to shoot yourself in the foot. And
exactly.
It's one of those the Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
It is, and I do understand it is extremely complicated to read YAML files and understand it, and you need a very in-depth understanding of how Azure pipelines and the jobs and the tasks all orchestrate together to understand files.
I do think that as I'm climbing up and you're there, I will see various points on the way that I'm like, okay, you could stop here. Right, this could be enough already in terms of added value from where I am right now.
Right.
And I think those need to be explicit as well. Like, oh, well, you don't need to do the pipelines. You can do just, for instance, you could use these and these features of the DevOps environment that already make it more valuable than where we are with GitHub.
Right. And that's part of the reason why I'm trying to build a set of standard templates to be able to share with people. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, I want somebody to be able to use, did I implement this template? No, I didn't implement this template. If we go to GitHub community, I think it's in here. No, it's probably in the develop bridge. Where did I put it? It's probably still in the pull request.
Yeah, I think it is.
Nope, that's the wrong pull request. I want this one.
That one, yeah.
Yes. So at the end of the day, I want somebody to be able to just input their couple parameters that override stuff. And I don't want them to worry about creating the task, because that is really easy for somebody to it's still the YAML, and YAML makes our eyes read, but it's much easier than having someone create all the tests and say, oh, well, this works for Cake Build, or this works for MS Build, and it's going to do everything. Here are my parameters, and here's how I can change, adjust how they work.
Right.
And the goal, we discussed this in a previous meeting, is that everything is on an opt-in basis. So it doesn't do anything you don't want to do, and everything's going to have comments. So if you want to opt in to automatic release notes, you put that setting. If you want to opt in automatic releases, you put that setting. If you don't put it, it just doesn't do anything.
Right, but on the GitHub page, for
Kinda
instance, I don't see that little green blurb, do I? That the build passed.
No, we need to put it. We need to put it. I don't have access. Do you have access, Andrew?
For the DN wiki.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
the little
The README.
Oh, you're
thing.
talking about the badge. Yeah.
Yeah,
badge,
I can put that on. I still have some work that we need to finish up with a pull request before we put it on.
All right.
But and that's pretty standard to get working. It is a little slow going right now because I'm doing this as I have time, and with DNN Summit, haven't had as much time as I would like.
No, it's just that gives the final kind of wrap for the outsider. Like, okay, that's
Right.
what the benefit.
This and the pull request validations that we can put a condition that you cannot merge something that doesn't build.
Yeah,
which is cool
Exactly.
too.
But
And
so
you get nightly builds.
one other aspect of this is that until now, all of my modules basically reference the DLLs, the libraries locally, right? And this is something that you may have seen crop up in conversations recently. Because I threw out there a question to my community saying, who's on board with Nuget and who isn't, and it kind of splits our community down the middle, right? Yep. So there are people like David and yourself who are fervent Nuget users, and there are people like me who are just slackers, right? We don't really get on board with this, but there are reasons for this, and so there is an RFC out on DNN. So if any of you would like to chime in there, please do. The push I'm trying to make actually is to get our NuGet packaging cleaned up so it becomes useful for someone like me, and clearer also for someone like me, because my main points of objection have been that one, the naming is wildly confusing for me. Like, you get, I don't know, like 12 .NET Nuke packages when you type .NET Nuke, and I have no clue what they each do, or like what I'm getting. And I'm very familiar with .NET Nuke development, so I know exactly which DLLs I want, but I can't figure that out for the life of me from what I.
Right.
And the other thing is that it's missing, some of the key DLLs that I need to develop. So if you're developing an MVC module, you need the system web MVC or something like that of a specific version that you're building against, because that's the one that comes with the DNN distribution.
Right, and that goes back to the NuGet package manifest declaration file that gets shipped as part of the NuGet package file. And there is a node called dependencies that you can then specify, .NET framework dependencies on system web or whatever we need to. And if that's not there, that's a major problem.
All right, so can you at least, I mean, I don't want you to do any extra work, but can you just throw an eye on that RFC? Because currently it's just kind of like a hot debate between myself and Mitch Sellers, because we don't really see everything exactly the same way.
What's the name of that?
It's on the GitHub DNN, and then it's one of the last
2586 improved.
The third one there, I think.
Dependencies.
Oh, this one. You're staring me right in the face.
Probably.
And my apologies, Peter. I haven't chimed in on this yet. it's on my to-do list. I just haven't had time.
Oh, there's a lot going on here. Okay,
Yeah.
I will read this. It might not be today, but I will read
No,
this.
no, no. It's okay. It's okay. And honestly, I've tried to keep everything. Luckily, this RFC hasn't spun off into name calling or everything. We're really having a debate about what would be the best way forward. There is a, let's say, difference of vision between myself and Mitch, but it's mostly cosmetic. I think at the end of the day, we are going to work stuff out. He is somewhat skeptical that this can be done. How shall I say, fast. He resists doing massive updates because he says it takes such a long time to get NuGet packages to the NuGet store, basically. And because I think for some reason you have to do them one by one. I'm not that familiar with the process.
You do, but you can automate it. Anyways, there are ways to speed that process up.
Okay, so I have set up, as it happens, a cake script here with some code to basically unpack all the zips that I have in my massive, DNN repository at home. It takes out the bin folder, and I take a template new spec file, and I create NuGet packages from that. Based on some new criteria that we can define in what comes out of the thread.
For all the DLLs?
For all the friggin' DLLs.
Oh, that's not good.
No, but I can also say, well, I'm going to do, for instance, I did exactly as Mitch wanted as well. I said, no, but you include dependencies too, etc. So I don't need to include all the DLLs. I can include any DLL that I want, right? But
what do you want in the end to have a very small number of NuGet packages with each one DLL? So package size.
No, my ultimate goal is that as a module developer, I know exactly which package I need, and that's right. So if I'm developing an MVC module, there should be a .NET Nuke and I make the case here for having like .NET Nuke .development.mvc, so I know that package includes all the DLLs. If I have a very, very, very specific wish, that might trigger an extra demand, but it should at least contain things like JSON.NET, and it should at least contain, we made a small list here. It should contain at least the Microsoft ASP.NET MVC, Razor, web pages, right? Those are the things that if I don't include them, my module will not build. Now, my critique was if I'm forced to add it manually, as has been the case until now, I would need to know which DLL was distributed with the DNN version that I'm targeting. So let's say I was writing something for 720. I would need to go to a 720 and find out which MVC.DLLs were distributed with that version. Right now, I don't think the versions were bumped ever, but I'm not 100% sure either.
Just trying to make sure I understand. If you get the DNN bundle for 921, everything is there, no?
Nope.
Not everything.
Oh, no? Okay.
No, by far it isn't. It's actually, it doesn't include any foreign DLLs. It just includes .NET Nuke DLLs.
It includes like it doesn't include all the .NET Nuke DLLs either.
No, indeed.
But that's something else. Peter, I wanted to mention one thing here. I understand what you're trying to do with the .NET Nuke .development.web API and .mvc. I strongly advise we do not go down that path.
So that's my concern too. The naming.
And here's why. To me, that is extremely confusing. When I see anything that says development in a NuGet package name, to me and to most of the NuGet, the greater NuGet community, that comes off as an experimental build that you should never be using in
Okay, you're
production.
talking about the
Oh,
naming
right.
of the package.
Yeah.
Okay. But do you agree that it would be useful? I mean, the word development I just grabbed out of the air. Do
Right.
you agree that it's useful to have a naming convention that distinguishes between a small siloed package that includes a few DLLs from our distribution, like for instance instrumentation, which adds the ability to do logging within your module, from a more comprehensive package that targets a specific development case that you're in front of?
So here's the thing that we need to decide as a larger community for module development. It doesn't matter. For DNN, it doesn't matter, because if we were doing something that wasn't DNN, we'd be having a different conversation. But at the end of the day, when you package up a DNN module, all of your DNN DLLs are already going to be on the site. So does it really matter that your local development environment is referencing every single DLL that's in DNN? No, because when you actually generate your package, you're only going to grab the DLL for your module and the files that go along with that, and that's going to get shipped in. You're not going to be replacing .NET nuke.web.dll when you install your module, or you shouldn't. We'd be having a bad time.
Exactly.
So in this case, it doesn't matter. But if we weren't working in the DNN environment, I would say, no, you need to have a NuGet package that covers just the MVC side of stuff and the assemblies that go with that. You would need a package that covers just the logging stuff and the stuff that goes with that. But for something like this, I really don't think it matters. And maybe community members don't understand that part or not, but I guess it goes down to preference and how particular we want to be.
That's really interesting you say that, because that's the discussion around my kitchen sink proposal, which basically just wraps all of the DLLs. And
well, I mean, my thought on that though is, like, when you say all the DLLs, I'm sorry, and I'm not caught up on the RFC, but I think there's going to be consternation when it comes to the word all there, because if you get all of those DLLs that are in the bin folder, you're literally putting DLLs in there that should never be accessed directly. It should go through the DNN API to access those things. Like, for instance, CDF, you don't want anybody accessing that directly. You want them to go through the proper API, right?
That's true, but can you define for me? Okay, CDF, yes.
There's a few of them, CK.
There's a few.
Yeah,
but,
there's a few. So I don't know if that's causing problem or not.
But here's the thing, and that comes to the wrapper discussion I have in this thread as well, is that unfortunately we've wrapped a lot of this stuff over the past, giving us a lot of code in DNN. And I'm going to take the example of the sharp ziplib. Right, the sharp ziplib has been wrapped by DNN, so you have compression methods in the DNN library. Unfortunately, the method that I need is never there, because they didn't do a complete wrapper of the entire DLL of sharp ziplib, which should also be a silly exercise, right? To just copy every method. It does a basic, like, oh, you've got a couple of DLLs in that folder, create a zip, something like that. But for some reason, I always end up needing special things, like, for instance, streaming. I don't want it to go to disk. I want it in a memory stream or whatever, and the method is not there. So you end up having to sidestep it, going back to sharp ziplib. Now, all of a sudden, you've got your dependency on sharp ziplib, and then now you're saying that. I mean, that was my argument to say I don't think the wrappers are the end-all solution to all of our issues. Plus, if we ever do want to switch out those components, right, to something else, because that's the only argument for actually doing it. So you say, well, we can change the sharp ziplib in the future because you're just referencing the DNN. That's what you're saying. You should never reference the DLL directly. You should reference DNN. Well, the only argument for that is because we can switch stuff out in a later date. But it ends up you can't, because different solutions just have wildly different architectures. We've never successfully actually switched something out. We haven't switched Telerik out for something else, for instance, right? And everything in Telerik was wrapped. Like, what is what was all that code for if I could have just referenced Telerik directly in the bin folder?
I think that specific case was a licensing issue.
Anyway, I mean, there's several discussions happening in this RFC thread, but they concern this group very much. And if you guys can find some time to, if let's say if you're interested in the whole Nuget discussion, right, and where we're taking this, then please chime in and let me know what you think, where we should go with the whole packaging.
Cool. There's like 10 minutes left, and I have a hard stop because I have another meeting after this one.
We all do.
Okay, that's it. I was going to ask to get the screen back. So the next point was automatic release notes, which is part of that, right?
By David. Yeah, the automatic release notes has been done by David and not so much by me. I just raised the question, 7.2.
Okay.
But I think David has done all the work on the NV quick theme or NV quick site, something like that.
Yeah, and Andrew's already incorporated that into the build stuff as well, or he's trying to. There's some issues.
Yeah.
So it's becoming part of this.
It might not be fully implemented in the DNN wiki. Honestly, I haven't touched that in like 3-4 weeks now, but I do have it working on many of my projects, including that DevOps template that I showed you for my business's GitHub, and that is working with uploading zips to GitHub. I just haven't had a chance to bring everything back full circle to the community modules yet.
Cool, but that ultimately will become part of the automated build, right?
Yes, that will become part of the automated build, and we can set it up so people can opt into it. And after Summit, I'm going to create another repository in the community modules that will be for DevOps templates, so we can have them all in one place and we can track issues there.
Do you have any time or any prerequisites to start using the existing ones? Because I was thinking about a very simple module, which is called reports. It's not being touched by quite some time, so I can try to use the build part and maybe the release note.
Is it using MS Build?
Yep.
Yeah, it should be fine. Shoot me an email or hit me up on Slack, and we could talk about it if you run into problems.
Okay, will do.
I can definitely assist as needed with it.
Yeah, I just want to give it a try. So you have another repository with a quite simple module like reports, and see how difficult it is to implement this standard way of building and generating release notes.
Yeah, let's talk. We can talk more about it.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. On the other points, well, that's going to be postponed, but I had a chat with Francisco today, and he's going to be working on, I'm going to take out my name from this actually. He's going to be working on the vendors banners module, I guess in the next weeks. The blog module, I didn't have time other than cleaning the issues. I didn't have time yet to start working on them, but it's still on my plate. We were chatting about test plans and Selenium and stuff. There's nothing new on this. We can push this to next meeting. Andrew?
Yes, we can push that to next meeting.
And yeah, that was basically doesn't need to be on the agenda. But if people try the modules with the N93, please update the release notes to indicate so. I was working a little bit on this today to have a community homepage, which would be basically about the same Jekyll theme that we made for documentation, but instead of being for a specific project, it would be for the organization. And I would like, ultimately, I was playing with it a bit today, but didn't have enough time to have anything ready to show. Ultimately, I would have an aggregate view of all the issues with the bug tag, with an enhancement tag, kind of aggregating the whole projects in one page. And hopefully that would replace the Excel worksheet that we have. And we could quickly find, the oldest issue or the project with the lead, the oldest release, or, kind of having an aggregate view of all the projects. So
Nice.
that's still in the works. Is there anything else that we need to get to in the last 4 minutes we have here? No? Cool. So see you in 2 weeks, and I'm almost catched up with publishing the blog posts and the meeting videos. It's something I hope I'll be fully catched up by next week.
Great.
So have fun and see you in 2 weeks.
I see you in 4 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yes. It was
Thanks,
nice
Daniel.
spending Valentine's with you all.
Oh,
Real
it
love.
is definitely.
Oh,
You guys
yeah.
in 2 minutes.
Oh, yeah. For the real love.
Okay, see you.